Hello everyone, I'm Alex Russo and I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. While I usually give world building advice or tell short stories, today I'm going to be breaking down the Hunger Games franchise and critiquing some world building and character arc choices. I will be giving spoilers for the books and movies, so if you don't want any surprises, I recommend that you watch or read them all first before watching this presentation. And with that, let the first Hunger Games analysis begin. So the most common thing I've seen with the Hunger Games franchise that has caused disputes among fans is that there is no canonical map of the nation of Panem that shows where the districts are. As a result, I decided to make my own map that avoids breaking the lore as much as possible. In the Hunger Games book series, we're given the locations of the capital in districts 12, 11, 13, 3, and 7, or can deduce their locations based upon geographical references given by the characters. However, most of the country is left in obscurity, so I fixed it based upon their industries and the corrected coastlines for the date of the story based upon factual sea level rise data. While the general locations of districts 9, 10, and 7 as well as the capital are the same, I shuffled the districts around a bit. I moved District 12 north, which tailors it to fit the need I have ascribed it in my take on the Hunger Games. District 3 fills almost all of the southern United States, while District 4 sits on the Gulf of Mexico. I did move District 11 south to fill most of Mexico because its economy is based upon agriculture, and the warm climate of Mexico provides year-round production of foodstuffs. District 1 is in California because it is the luxury goods district, and California's history of the gold rush as well as large open spaces of rich fertile soil, and several vineyards throughout the state enable it to fulfill this role. District 2 fills the entirety of the Sonoran Desert and Nevada because it is the masonry and stone-cutting district, and this area has numerous mountain ranges. District 5 is fossil fuels, plastics, and mining, as Alaska is largely empty and has huge ore veins and reserves of crude oil that can be refined into petroleum products and plastic. I changed this one from its canonical economy of energy production because it simply doesn't make sense. Similarly, I changed District 6 from transportation and the manufacturing of vehicles to the supply of raw materials such as enriched uranium and rare earth elements in the aftermath of District 13's destruction because I have its location in Canada, which has some of the world's largest deposits of uranium and a substantial supply of rare earth elements. Finally, I changed District 12 from coal mining to metallurgy for a couple of reasons. The first is that Katniss mentions that District 12 has a lack of victors because the mines are dangerous, keeping children from learning how to fight with everyday objects. In the real world, children worked in the coal mines of England during the First and Second Industrial Revolutions because of their small size, and today children are still employed in African mines because of these traits. However, metallurgy often involves heavy machinery, which is kept away from children because of their complexity and the risks involved in using them. The second is that my location of District 12 places it in a region that historically was used in the American metallurgical industry, as it sits upon the Great Lakes in the state of Pennsylvania. Wrapping up with District 13, I would have had it originally focus on weapons, technology, and rare earth elements, but have these industries split between Districts 3, 2, and 6 in the aftermath of the Dark Days. Additionally, because the districts are big, I would have more than one city in each district, and had several towns scattered throughout with a district capital where the reapings were held. I also would have given the capital a name, and used the term similar to how people know the name of their national capital but refer to it with the term capital. Finally, I would have been careful with the use of pas et cons in Mockingjay because it almost satirizes the name of the country because of the emphasis on bread in the series. If I was to keep the mention, I would have had the lore be that the dictatorship chose the name Panem to mock the people in the districts because district diets largely consisted of bread and bread-like food. Another world-building choice I would make would be a detailed description about the Dark Days and what caused the districts to revolt in the first place. Because the world is a big place and there's a lot of opportunity for nations to arise in the aftermath of what caused the societal collapse in the series, I would have given Panem at least one rival nation to compete with in the post-apocalyptic world. This would set the stage for why Panem needs peacekeepers, Additionally, this would also provide a reason for how the Dark Days began, as the districts may not have wanted to engage in a war due to problems at home, provoking a civil war. Not to mention, having an enemy state provides numerous opportunities for the rebellions to have additional backers and incentives, while providing another reason for the capital to build up a nuclear arsenal. Moreover, if these nations had different styles of government, it would also enrich the discussion in Mockingjay about how to restructure Panem after Snow and his regime was overthrown. Starting off with the prequel novel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I just have to say, well done. However, I do believe that there could have been a couple of changes to the story. First of all, I didn't like the arena situation. After all, the capital is paranoid and frightened of the districts, at least in the aftermath of the Dark Days, so I would have had the arena moved somewhere other than the capital's downtown area. Moreover, because some of the tributes were angry with the capital, someone should have thought that some tributes might try to escape and ravage the citizens of the capital, which would facilitate the need to move the first arena away from the main city, especially considering some of the events that occurred during the 10th Hunger Games. So, Snow lands on top, which is why the third act of the story threw me. While I do like how the last third of the book reminds young Snow that he is not untouchable, and he develops his trademark quality of covering his tracks, I would have made it a little clearer that Dr. Gall was behind it all in order to teach him a lesson. Even an explicit mention of her and Dean Highbottom having secret discussions when the mentors were away could present readers with the possibility of this happening. Additionally, I felt that there should have been some resolution as to whether Lucy Gray survived after attempting to run away from District 12, considering that Snow was paranoid about his DNA on the weapons he used to attack Lucy Gray and defend both himself and her from individuals who are about to expose her plans of fleeing from Panem. Any criminal investigation would scan the surrounding area of where the body would be found, and they would have found Snow's hidden cache of weapons in the lake. Alternatively, I could have had Snow stash these weapons away in a large log, far from the lake, for later use, of course. So, I have not read Sunrise on the Reaping because it came out when I started writing this presentation, but I'm going to touch on a couple of main points summarized from the fandom page and what my acquaintances have told me. Leave a comment below letting me know if I missed anything or said something incorrect. First of all, good job Suzanne Collins on affirming fan theories about the relation of Katniss to Lucy Gray. It explains why Snow has such an obsession with Katniss in the trilogy, and why Katniss's father knew some of the songs sung by the Covey troupe. I also like that because District 12 is so small, there are many connections between important characters, such as the Covey family, the Everdeens, the Abernathy's, and so on. I also liked how Beetee and Wyrus were the mentors for Haymitch in the story because they surface later on in the series. However, despite District 3 tributes mentoring Haymitch, I would have not had him be so tech-savvy, and instead have placed this responsibility on Beetee's son Ampere. When it came to hacking the arena, I would have had the program completed, but only need to have it be uploaded. Also, because there was not much shown in the tape Katniss and Peeta watched during the train ride in Catching Fire, I would have made mention of the Capitol altering the tape at the end of the book to cover up Haymitch's sabotage of the arena. So, continuing on to the original Hunger Games book, there's not much I would change. However, I would have had one of the arenas not just built in District 12, but nearby the seam where the Everdeen family lived, a constant reminder of the games and their treachery. This would have driven Katniss to do whatever she could to keep Prim from participating in the games, and could have also presented Prim with the temptation to take out the Tesserae, which could be why Katniss forbade her from doing so. Circling back to Snow and his weapons cache, I could also have had Katniss discover it and use it when hunting. This would deepen the relationship between him and her. Additionally, because all tributes are given a microchip to ensure they do not escape from the arena, the original books have this device removed from their arms after the game's end. Because small implants are hard to remove, I would have left the chips in the tributes' arms and used them as a way for the Capitol to blackmail them into being subservient and to avoid fleeing Panem. and since the tributes appear to be the main celebrities in Panem, this would have kept them from provoking a new rebellion, leaving the capital with supreme power. So, while there was not a lot I would change with the first book in the main trilogy and The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, or even Sunrise on the Reaping, Catching Fire is in need of a lot of critiquing. So, during the scene of when Snow challenges Katniss to keeping the population of Panem from revolting after her actions in the arena, I would have referenced the chip in her shoulder. Because she could be tracked, Snow and the other members of the capital government would know about her movements, and if the chip was very high-tech, it could detect things like speech patterns and relay them back to the capital. Because of this, Katniss would have an overarching dread when the revolt happened in District 11, and would have been apprehensive throughout the whole book. This would have also fueled her internal conflict with keeping Peeta alive to orchestrate the rebellion, since he was not being blackmailed. Next, what on earth is Haymitch doing running a rebellion since he devolved into a big, fat, dysfunctional drunk? Well, I understand Beatty and Wyrus recruited him in his own standalone novel, and he wanted revenge because Snow destroyed his life. He barely got Peeta and Katniss through the 74th Hunger Games, and was a poor mentor to the tributes before them, yet I'm supposed to believe he orchestrated an entire rebellion while half drunk? No. Instead, I would have had him tag along, or be brought up to speed once he was on the hovercraft. Which brings me to my next point. If Haymitch can't orchestrate a rebellion, and Katniss and Peeta were unaware of this conspiracy, that leaves Finnick Odair or Johanna Mason to carry out the plan. Yeah, I know there was a cohort of tributes in the arena that could have also done it, but I feel that Finnick, and secondly Joanna, would be the best picks for orchestrating the escape from the arena. Because the capital was treating both tributes in a very evil way, they both have a reason to rebel or seek revenge. Starting with Finnick, he had a love interest in another tribute that was psychologically scarred from her participation in the games, which could have driven him to overthrow the capital to ensure such damage could never occur again. Additionally, because he is described as a charming character, he would have a lot of charisma that could move entire towns to his bidding, which could provide useful in a rebellion or a conspiracy. With Johanna, she also has a dark past, and has a secretive motive to why she would want revenge on the capital. Moreover, she has a foreboding appearance and is good at axe throwing, which could make her a feared leader in a rebellion. Finally, I just gotta say, I felt that the second rebellion was a little too accelerated, which makes me propose that there could have been signs that the districts were already at the breaking point before the events of the first book and were already performing acts of sabotage, even minor ones, against the capital before the Quarter Quell, and that it was the last straw that sent them into an uproar since the previous tributes were being redrafted into the Hunger Games, violating the established rules. While minor acts of rebellion were hinted at in Sunrise on the Reaping, I would have made them a little more obvious in the main trilogy. In conclusion, we have Mockingjay. So, my only critiques on this one are that I would have had Katniss act a little differently in the final chapters. Because she was once a tribute, it would make sense that she would not vote in favor of setting up a new Hunger Games event that used capital children because of the grotesque premise of the games. Yet, we see her voting in favor of this when Alma Coin proposes it, once the capital is taken by rebels. Additionally, the chapter where she was fading in and out of consciousness after the firebombing was hard to read, as it was hard to tell when her hallucinations ended and what was real or not. Additionally, I would have had her be subservient to President Coin from District 13 a little more, or at least making up for Coin's antipathic behavior in order to destroy the capital because of its oppressive regime. She would only realize that Alma was evil when she proposed the Hunger Games with capital children. From this, we have two variations of an alternate way the series could go. Going with these alternate ways of ending the series, and continuing with the theme of revolutions and civil wars, I would have had Coin live at the end of Mockingjay, and then turn on Katniss and try to get rid of her for good. I would then cut the trilogy with Katniss realizing the dangers of populism, and that the one who assumes power after a revolution is not always better than the original oppressor, while she roamed Panem to escape Coin. Alternatively, I could have made the original trilogy become a quartet, with the same end result as achieved in the original series. While I don't want to write an entire fanfiction or make Suzanne Collins feel like she did a poor job with her series, since it is excellent, I will suggest that the fourth book would have had Peeta, Katniss, Effie, and Haymitch on the run as Gale and Coin work against them. I'll let you all fill in the blanks. And that is all I have for today. Thank you for watching.